have 8 books on my August TBR for this month, and I feel like I have failed miserably to read these. So welcome to today's reading vlog. We are going to try and get through some of my August TBR before the month is over. We're just going to see how much I can actually get through. Like I said, there's 8 altogether, and the ones that I've read or tried to read so far, we have Twisted Games by Anna Huang. I read this for a reading vlog this month, so this one we can tick off. And then we have Do No Harm by Jack Jordan. In that same reading vlog, I DNF'd this literally within the 3rd chapter. It was just too much for me. It was literally giving me anxiety reading this, and I just didn't want it in my head, so I decided to DNF this. But I am kind of thinking something. So the way that I chose this monthly TBR is using a random letter generator. And I mentioned in that video that Daydream by Hannah Grace, which is one of my most anticipated new releases this year, is actually coming out towards the end of August. And I'm thinking, because this starts with a D, and so does Daydream, maybe we can replace this with Daydream when it comes out. That's what I'm thinking, because I know that when that comes out I'm going to want to prioritise that book, so I feel like I'm going to swap this out for Daydream onto my TBR. I feel like that's okay. So we're just going to have to imagine that this is Daydream instead. And then we have 6 left. 7 including Daydream, but we have 6 left. We have Please Stand By Emily Rennie. We have Somebody I Used to Love by Eve Ainsworth. We have Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of feel like maybe I should have saved this for a September or October TBR, just based on the vibes of this, and I feel like it would be perfect when the weather's a bit colder, but I definitely will read this within the next coming months. So I think we might save this one for September, October time. I hope you guys are okay with that. And then we have Love My Afterlife by Kirsty Greenwood. And then we have Hits Different by Tasha Guri and Lizzie Huxley-Jones. And then we have After the Fire by Charlotte Rickson. Let's see how many of these we can get through before the end of August. I feel like to start with, it kind of makes sense for me to go for Hits Different by Tasha Guri and Lizzie Huxley-Jones, just because I really want to read this before summer is over, and this is very much giving summery vibes, and I believe it's set in Ibiza as well, so I feel like I want to prioritise this. So should we start with this one first? I feel like we should. I'm currently 66 pages into Hits Different, and I don't know how I feel so far. I'm struggling a bit with the writing style. I find some of the sentences are worded a bit strangely to be honest, and some of them I have to like reread to fully understand what they mean, and I feel like I'm kind of stumbling over some of the sentences and just the order of certain words in a sentence. I don't know, I'm not finding that it flows very easily at the minute. I don't know whether it's something that I'm just gonna have to get used to, and the more I read the more I get used to it. I don't know. But also there's some things that I just feel like nobody would ever say. Like the way things are described, and I get that she's like really passionate about dancing because our main character is a dancer. I understand that she's really passionate about dancing, that she absolutely loves it, but just some of the ways that she describes it are just kind of overly fluffy, I want to say. Just in a way that I feel like they'd never say that in real life, like nobody would talk like that. I don't know, it's really hard to explain. Also, there are some things that I'm really struggling with in terms of consistency. For example, she's about to meet the guy that she's kind of seeing, and they're about to go on this date, and he texts her saying, "Sorry babe, running late, do you want to meet at the restaurant instead?" And she says, "That's totally fine, see you soon." But then later on, literally on the next page, she says, "Meeting at the restaurant means he must have forgotten that he was going to pick me up." And I'm like, but he hasn't forgotten because he said before, "I'll meet you there instead," which kind of implies that he knows he was meant to, but he was running late like he said. So he's saying that he'll meet her there instead. It's little things like that that are really jarring, especially when they're that close together, because I really noticed them, because that was literally on the next page that it said that, and I thought, but I don't know where that's come from. I know that's kind of being really picky about it, but it just kind of makes it a bit jarring to read, I feel like. And there's quite a few things that are like that I'm like, but you just said that a second ago and now you're saying something completely different. Confusing. It's confusing. It's also not really giving me massive summer vibes yet, but they haven't got to Ibiza yet. It's basically following Cassie, who is our main girl that we're following, and she's deaf and she's a dancer. She's always loved dancing, and this famous singer that her and her best friend are obsessed with is basically touring at the minute, but she has lost all of her backing dancers to her rival singer. And so the singer is hiring completely new backup dancers to tour with her, and her best friend basically signs her up and she manages to get the job. But this job and the training and everything for it is taking place in Ibiza, which I also don't really know why they've chosen Ibiza. That just does not seem like the place that you would go and train and, I don't know, like rehearse for a tour. I don't know, that just seems a bit out of place to me, but it's fine, we're rolling with it. Hopefully we're going to get more of sort of the summer vibe when they get to Ibiza, which I feel like they're about to, because they're literally in the airport in chapter 5. So that's basically the plot, that's basically the gist of it. I'm going to try and get to 150 tonight and just see how I feel. That'll be halfway, so I'm going to try and read that much tonight. We'll see how we get on, but it's okay, it's okay. I feel like there is a lot of telling not showing as well, which isn't my favourite thing, but I'm hoping that it will pick up a bit more as well now that we're actually in Ibiza, and I feel like this is where the main plot starts. So I've got about just over halfway through and it's okay so far. The thing that's really sticking out to me is the singer, the kind of pop star person that is doing the tour that needs the dancers, is literally Taylor Swift. And the whole thing with the rival singer, I swear something happened with Taylor Swift and Katy Perry like ages ago. I swear it was that exact thing that happened, and it just feels a bit like a complete copy of that. And I don't know what it is, but that's just kind of bothering me to read, I think, because it just feels like a copy of it. But because it's so heavily Taylor Swift inspired, you'd think that would be a really fun thing and a really nice thing to read, but it's actually, I don't know what it is about it, but it's just really kind of bothering me to read. I don't know what it is, I don't know. I think because it just feels like an exact replica. It's not sort of loosely inspired, like it feels very much like a copy. I do really like the representation in here, and I like how the experience of being deaf is very clear here, and I like how our main girl Cassie, because she's deaf, we really get a small insight of what it is like for her to live being deaf and how it impacts her day-to-day life and just how she experiences the world and interactions with people. And I think that's been really interesting to read, and I feel like I'm learning more as I'm reading, and it's made me kind of more aware reading just some of the things that we might not even think about, but that somebody that is deaf might experience or think about regularly. And I think that's been really interesting to read, and I've really liked kind of learning that. I will say that the romance side is very, very minimal. It's very much a subplot. It's not even really there at the minute, and we're over halfway through, which is absolutely fine because I think this was kind of marketed as like more of a self-love discovery kind of book, but I have a feeling it also said rom-com. I'm not sure where I saw that, but it's been quite nice kind of just focusing on Cassie, the main girl, and sort of her interactions and experiences, and also the people that she's meeting on this tour and their little friendship group. It's been quite fun reading that. I do think also it is more character driven than it is plot driven, because the plot is basically them just training to potentially go on this tour with this famous pop star as a backup dancer. That's basically the plot. They're just training to do that, but we're kind of just getting their interactions as a friendship group. So I would say that it was more character driven. I'm interested to see what the rest of this is going to be like. But yeah, they're my thoughts so far. I've just finished reading Hits Different. I was listening to some of it on audiobook. I just don't think this is for me. I just think the writing style wasn't really my thing. I found that I was kind of cringing throughout, and it's not just cringing at things people were saying or the way certain scenes were described. It was cringing just at her internal dialogue, and I feel like that's not really happened to me before in terms of just general sentences were making me cringe, and just the way she was describing things or the way she was describing certain feelings. Like I said last night, I did really like the representation in here, and I found it really interesting to learn about the experiences of somebody that is deaf, and I thought that was really interesting, and it's very clear how much of an influence that Tasha Guri has had in that element of the character, as well as the dancing side as well. I will say that Cassie was quite annoying at times, and I feel like she was kind of a bit all over the place sometimes and would react to things in kind of a weird way. I don't know. It also feels very YA, which I don't think it is. I think it's a contemporary romance. Just the writing style and the way that the main character thinks was quite naive and just felt very YA, which is weird considering that it's not a YA book. And also it didn't majorly give me summery vibes. I mean, it was set in Ibiza, but that was kind of as far as the summer vibe kind of thing went, which isn't a massive problem, but I really thought that it was going to give me major summer vibes just from the cover and how it was kind of advertised and promoted as a summery rom-com kind of read. I will also say that the romance was very much in the background and it was much more focused on her as a main character, so I probably wouldn't say it was a rom-com really. It was much more sort of her finding herself and coming to terms with asking for what she wants, that kind of thing. I think for rating, it's probably like a 2.5, maybe a 2. It just wasn't for me. It just wasn't for me. So that's our first book of this vlog. I think next I'm going to move on to a book that I've been really anticipating, and I recently got sent this by the works, which I'm honestly so grateful for, and it also means that I've got it a little bit early, and that's Daydream by Hannah Grace. And look at these stunning sprayed edges. I'm obsessed. I got sent this yesterday and it comes out next week, I believe. And I really want to read it. I've been so excited for this. This is the third one in the Maple Hill series, so I think it's got to be done. I think we have to start this one today. I'm so excited because Hallie, who's the main girl, is a book girly. I think she has like a book club, and we know Henry from the other books and how nice he is, and everybody's literally been waiting for Henry's book. So I'm really excited to see what this one's like. I just thought I'd do a mini update. I'm only about nearly 50 pages in, so not very far, but I'm loving it. I'm loving it already. There's just so many things that I want to talk about already, and we're literally only 50 pages in. First of all, I've had to get my pen out because there are just so many things in here that are just so relatable, and the way that they're said, I'm like, that's literally how I feel, or I've literally experienced that before, and it just makes me want to highlight it so that I can go back to it. But this is what I absolutely love about this series, because yes, this series is so much fun, and it's got all the fun of the spiciness, but also just this group of friends all having fun. But the thing that I absolutely love is that yes, these characters are having fun in a realistic and real kind of way, but they're also so thought out and so relatable, and every single character of hers has something that they're dealing with or struggling with, or that is just a part of them and their everyday kind of life. And that's what I loved about the first two books, and then this one is literally no different. I've been absolutely loving it. I relate to both characters in some way, and I think it's really interesting that she actually put the reader's note at the start of the book, and she was explaining how she's put a piece of herself in every single one of the characters, and she lists the characters and kind of what traits have come from her, which has been so interesting to read, and I just think that's so nice to know. And it also really shows in the way that she writes about it that she fully understands it on a psychological, emotional kind of level, and I think that's why I really connect to it, because it's coming from somebody that you can tell has experienced these emotions and these traits, and you can really just tell that in the way that she writes about them. I love Hallie already. I love her. A book girly. Stop it. And of course we already knew Henry from the first two books, and I can't wait to see him in sort of a different kind of light, because we know in the first two that he hooks up with girls, but we've never really known him in a relationship. So I'm so interested to kind of see how that kind of pans out and what he's like in that situation. There's also been a Taylor Swift reference, which is literally on like page 3, and I was like, we love, because she referenced You Belong With Me, the song, but then not only that, she's also named the bookstore in here Enchanted, and the door of the bookstore, that rhymed, is lilac, like this cover. Do we sense a theme? Do we sense a theme? And not only that, but look at the cardigan that she's wearing. Is that not so Taylor Swift coded? And I'm loving it, I'm loving it. And so far they've only had one interaction, which has been short and sweet. Talking of which, I still need to listen to Sabrina's album. ASAP. It came out today and I've literally all day been meaning to listen to that. That's just reminded me. Anyway, it was short and sweet, but it was very cute and very flirty, which we love. And I can't wait for more scenes of them. That's literally what's kept me reading, because I just want to see them interact more, and I wanna know how it's gonna all start between them. I also love that the other characters from the other books are mentioned so much, literally so much, and they're just still very much present and there, and I love it. I love a little cameo, but it also feels like more than a cameo because they're literally just part of that world and part of this group, so obviously they're going to be there in these group meetings and group gatherings and stuff, and it just makes me really happy to read that. They're interacting. Little update. I finished Daydream by Hannah Grace. I loved it. I loved this book. There's so many things I feel like I want to talk about this book, and I don't even know where to start. First of all, the characters in here. I love that we got to see sort of softer characters than we've seen before. I feel like that was really nice and just refreshing to have characters that kind of just feel softer. The whole story and the romance just feels a bit softer, and I just feel like that was so nice to read and so nice to see, especially in this series and compared to the other two. The thing that I absolutely love about this whole series is that all the characters feel very thought out, and yet the whole series is just so fun, but it still feels very real and relatable, and that's what I absolutely love. And this was no different. These characters felt so thought out and just genuinely real. There is so much stuff that was represented in these books and within these characters that was so refreshing, and also tropes that I didn't necessarily think that I would like, but that actually worked really well, and I'm so glad that she wrote it like that just based on the representation. So one of those tropes is Hallie's kind of inexperience romantically, and I thought that that would be a trope that I didn't necessarily get on with very well, but I actually really like that it was represented and that not everybody is as experienced as Aurora in Wildfire or Anastasia in Icebreaker. I like that we have a character that is different to them. I also think there are things in both Hallie and Henry that I really related to, and you can kind of tell that it was written from a place of experience as well, and I think that's what made it so relatable when I was reading it. I also think that Henry's sort of characteristics, even though they're not diagnosed as anything, the representation that he has as a character is so well written and so well done, and it's not done in a really obvious, we are telling you that these are his characteristics. It's done in a really natural kind of, this is his experience of the world and how he handles things day to day. I also really like the way that it felt very much like they were learning who they were as individual characters, but they were also learning how to navigate each other as a friendship, also a potential for more, and they were learning what each other needed in certain situations. I just thought that was so nice to see, and I think the communication in here was actually really good for two characters that feel as complex as they are. I just really like how layered this book was, and these characters, and just the representation of so many different things. I feel like anybody could read this book and find something that they relate to in it, and like I said, I just really like that it felt sort of more slow burn and a bit softer than the other ones in the series. Don't get me wrong, I do absolutely still love the other two in the series, but I really like how this was sort of handled differently to the other two. I just really liked it. I'm not gonna lie, there were some scenes that I wasn't that much of a fan of. The art scene specifically. That's all I'm gonna say. That was the only thing that kind of really made me cringe, but other than that, I really enjoyed it. And this one I actually started annotating, whereas I don't think I did that with the other two. I definitely didn't do it with Wildfire. And I think when I was reading Icebreaker, I think I probably would have annotated that, but I think at the time I hadn't started annotating my books yet. So I actually think this is the first one in the series. I was literally like, I need to get a pen right now and underline these. Just because of the way certain emotions or experiences were described, I was like, that's so relatable. I'm gonna rate this 4 stars, I think, which is the same as I rated Wildfire. I would probably say I preferred this one to Wildfire, so maybe 4.5. Maybe. It just didn't quite have that 5-star feeling, and I feel like it was a tiny bit on the long side. And Henry as a character, some things that he said kind of bothered me. I completely understand that that's just what he's like and that's part of his personality and his characteristics, but some things, I think specifically the fact that he kept saying that he was like great at everything, and the way that he'd say it kind of came across as being cocky, even though that's just him thinking he's kind of just telling the truth. And that's why I'm kind of split about it, because I know that it's just his personality, but at the same time reading it I'm kind of like, oh, okay. But I also know that it wouldn't be true to him if it wasn't written like that. So I think overall I'm gonna rate it 4 stars, and I would definitely recommend this. And if you really don't like the spice in Icebreaker, if you tried that and didn't like the spice in that, I will say that there is less spice in here. There is still talk about it and it still does have spicy scenes, but nowhere near as much as Icebreaker or Wildfire. I don't actually know what book I'm in the mood to read next. I'm gonna go back to my little August TBR pile and have a look at which one I fancy reading. So you'll literally see that in the next clip. For Love My Afterlife. I'm just about halfway and I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it. When I tell you I have not chuckled at a book the way I've literally giggled at this one, I cannot stop laughing. It makes me laugh literally every other page. I love the way it's written. I love the humour aspect. I feel like I can picture these characters so well, and it literally feels like I'm watching a little like rom-com chick flick in my head. And just the personality of these characters is just done so well and it really comes across. It just means I can imagine them so well, and I feel like I know what they're like. And I don't quite know how she's managed to do that so well, but the concept of this is really interesting as well. So we follow Delphi and she basically ends up in the afterlife, and she makes a deal with this afterlife therapist that she meets there, because she basically meets somebody else in the afterlife, but it just so happens that this is a bit of a mix-up and he gets sent back to Earth. So then Delphi makes a deal that she can go back and she's got 10 days to go and find this stranger, and she basically thinks that he's her soulmate. So she gets 10 days to go back to Earth, find him and get him to kiss her. Is basically what she has to do, and if she can do that then she can be sent back to Earth to carry on with her life. But the catch is that she only knows his first name and he won't have any memory of ever being in the afterlife, so he won't have any clue who she is. So it basically follows her getting sent back to Earth and her just in London trying to track him down, but she ends up in the most awkward, funny situations in order to try and find him, and it's just so good. It's so good. I'm just loving the light-hearted funniness of it, and I'm finding it really fast-paced as well, and I feel very much like we're moving forward and we're not kind of stuck in one scene too long. It just feels like a really good pace, and I'm just honestly hooked, and all I want to do is get back to it and read the next chapter. I'm just having the best time. I'm having the best time. finished. I finished. This was such a good time. If you need a book that's going to be a little pick-me-up, or it's just going to make you giggle, and it's just something light-hearted and fun, this is the book for you. This is so much fun. The main character, Delphi, literally gives me Bridget Jones vibes, and that's all I could think throughout this whole thing. I just really enjoyed it. It literally made me chuckle every single chapter, and I honestly can't even think of another book that's made me chuckle the way that this one has. I just really like the way this was written. I really like how chaotic and messy the main character is. This afterlife therapist, she's called Merit, and just the way that she is so all over the place and so chaotic. I just feel like the way that she was written, I can imagine how she speaks, how she acts. I can imagine what she looks like. I can just imagine what she's like as a person. Literally from the second page you get this image of what she's like as a character, and I really liked her. I also like how there were sort of mini tropes in here. So we have like the fake dating trope in here, but I liked that it wasn't the whole plot and it wasn't the whole story. We just got one scene with that trope, and there were a few tropes like that where we got one scene here and there, but it wasn't the purpose of the whole book, and I really liked the way that was done. I did enjoy the romance sort of side of this, but I do think it wasn't that heavy on the romance side. There was definitely romance in it, but I found that I was more invested in just her on this journey than I was in the sort of romance side of it. I really like the magical realism aspect, and I think if you like Ashley Poston's books, you will like this one as well. It was just a really good time. It was a really good time. I think I'm gonna rate this one 4 stars. Maybe 4.5, but I think probably 4. I'm gonna go for 4 stars. It was just such a good time and really made me giggle. It literally makes me giggle even just thinking about it, honestly. But if you need a little pick-me-up book, I'd definitely recommend this. We're actually at the end of August now, so that means that this video has come to an end. I managed to read 3 books out of the remaining ones that are on my TBR. I feel like that's not too bad. Considering that 2 of them were like 400 pages long, I don't think that's too bad going. We by no means finished the August TBR, but that's okay. We move forward. But I'm glad that we got through 3 of them that were on there and that were really anticipated for me and that I was really wanting to read. So I really hope that you've enjoyed this video and enjoyed coming along with me attempting to finish my TBR. Thank you so much for watching, and I will hopefully see you in my next video.